Actually, except for the last reel, which all of a sudden got kind of bright and yellow, that really looked terrific. That print.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree. Yeah,
I mean, in fact, except scratches and battered,
yeah.
starts and finishes, but it looked better than the digital copy I saw a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Better color, just better everything.
I also feel like I set expectations really low in the introduction.
Well, it's
But no, the color was great. You can kind of predict when the changeovers were coming, but for a print that was nearly 30 or 40 years old, it looks
it's pretty amazing.
pretty nice. So you had watched the film digitally a few weeks ago or so, but I don't know. What stood out to you this time around?
Hmm?
What stood out to you just watching it now on a print, especially?
Well, just actually color-wise, I mean, just if you're going to be about cinematography, color-wise, I mean, it's just a different. I mean, you can get very beautiful color in digital, and you get all that, but just simply the color was simply better, richer, more complex. Perhaps it's the grain, but it wasn't even that. It's just the quality of the color, the warm versus the cold, all of it. It's just a different medium. There's no two. And done a lot of film, and then for the last 15 years, I haven't used a film camera actually. It's all been digital, and you forget. When we see it again, it just has a richer, more complex beauty to it.
So, can you take us back to this period in your career? Can you tell us just how you joined this production?
Oh boy. Well, this is fairly early in the game, I would say, and this was not a big budget film. Actually, this was a very relatively small budget film, and in fact, we had to struggle to get, how enough old cars, enough of this, enough of that. It was that doesn't seem like that again when you see it, but it definitely was. But the one thing I'll say, actually, the first shot of the movie, which is the car driving out of the night into the day, and then it cuts to Gene sitting in the car, drinking a cup of coffee and watching. That's the very first thing we did, actually. And in this movie, I operated the camera. Besides, there were other operators when we did the basketball, but I did the basic camera operating as well as DPing, and I'm sitting in the car, and Gene gets in the car, and I thought, oh, I best be on my A game today. And it was like dawn. I mean, dawn, and Gene drove the whole thing all the way to, you see later on, and driving into town was a different shot. But just the shots of the car driving through the landscape and then ending with a high shot. He gets out of the car and there's a church and a crossroad. And he never said anything to me. Except, well, maybe he said, should I turn this way? And I said, no. Because we were all alone. We're just alone in the car. I mean, there was, so, and it was like, I guess, scary a little bit.
Right. I mean, you're saying you were fairly early on in your career. Gene Hackman, at this point he's fairly established.
Oh, yeah,
and also David Anspaugh, this is his debut feature.
First.
So I'm just curious what that dynamic was like, what it was like just generally working with Gene Hackman at this stage in his career.
Well, again, you absolutely felt when he walked on the set, you absolutely had to be on your A game, absolutely. You had to know exactly what you were doing. With any hesitation, Gene did not do well with that. but somehow he and I got along very well. I was always a well-prepared person, and I was sort of, I believe in that, to be as prepared as possible. So, the places would be lit, and we always had a good idea. Had gone over all the shots with David, and had a good idea of what we were going to do. So that was fine. But he could be fierce, that's for sure. But there was no small talk. There was no other it was strictly the work. That's what you were doing, yeah. And it's funny, I don't know how many of you have seen many of these movies that have been screening, but he's often the same person with a few exceptions. And it's in like Night Moves or he's often the same person as he is in this movie. And it's like a gift. Even he has this sort of gift of being, having exactly the right reaction at the right moment. That'll mean something. And the right small thing, the right small look in his eye, the twist, the laugh, all that. It's and there's some movies where he's different, but few.
Yeah, there's always an authenticity to his
Yeah.
performance, and I think this film endures because it feels so authentic throughout. I mean, you're talking about the opening sequence, which was the first sequence that you shot with him, and I think there's just such a immediately recognizable warmth that this film has throughout. Whether we're seeing these exterior shots that are really beautiful, but even just these interiors in the gymnasiums, I think just have a certain coziness to them or something like that. And I'm just curious how you define the look to the film with David, and how you thought about color and lighting throughout this film.
Well, actually coziness was not the thought, but warmth was the thought, that you would have this sense of time, also the sense of the past, that we saw the past kind of as a warm, textured place where, unlike when you at the very end, when you go to Indianapolis, it looks obviously different. It's metal, it's harsh. Those gyms are all wood. They were all real, actually. There's only one set, I think, in this whole movie. It's the barber shop in the beginning where they quiz him and everything. We actually built that, but I think everything else was a location. But it was all wood, that warmth, and that was also a big part of it. And the light is often warm, and the light is often complicated, dark. There's dark sides to people's faces, and there's often strong light coming in the background, or maybe strong light hitting them. But that light is usually warm. The only time it's cool, actually, in some of the exteriors where it's foggy and gray and what have you. And I will say one other thing: the sun really only shines in one shot in this movie. There's an accident where you see a little piece of sun in the background, but that was an accident. And towards the very end of the movie, there's a shot of a cornfield and the sun coming up. But the sun it's only in the interiors when lights are coming through the window. But in the outside, you never see the sun, which is interesting because also it rained all the time, which you never see in the movie, but it did.
Well, you mentioned the difference when we're in this final state championship game at the Butler Fieldhouse. It's this kind of cavernous gymnasium. Can you talk about how you sort of shifted the way you operated?
Well,
that sequence.
Yeah, that was mostly, I would say, found in a sense. I couldn't light that; it was too big. So I used their lights, which were actually cold. So, and everything, of course, was metal and not wood. So it had that, immediately had that cold, they were some kind of vapor source. Whereas all the lights we used and everything else were all warm tungsten lights. So, that, and I guess, I'm going to say something that's embarrassing, but was this conscious, or did it just sort of happen? In a funny way, a lot in movies just sort of happens. You think, you're often just guided by your instinct, you've sort of decided that's how you want things to look, but when you're doing it, there's many forces, many things, and working against you, and then you walk into a room or walk into a building and you say, yes, David, let's shoot here. This is the perfect, it simply tells you. So many things, I think, sort of happen to you in a movie.
Can you reflect on a specific example besides the light shining accidentally, or besides the sunlight shining at some point accidentally?
Well, also the other shot I love in this is the shot of the church where they're having the meeting, which and it starts the scene, and it's like beautiful. It was just fog all of a sudden appeared. We didn't make that fog all around it, and the fog all of a sudden appeared. We saw, shoot now, let's shoot now, before. So that sort of thing. Yeah, that's a very beautiful shot.
I'll open it up to audience questions, but I just have a quick question about just how you actually shot these games. I find that each time we're watching a game, it's quite unfussy but very legible. It's very easy to follow.
This is a couple of ideas. The major idea, which this was before this film was made, most sports films were not as visceral. They didn't get actually out right out in their Steadicam on the court. Actually, if you remember what sport films look like, they often were not this sort of intensely detailed. You were close, you were far, the main reason I think for that is we decided to do all the plays like little scenes. So we would break them down. And, Buddy gets the ball, the camera wants to be here, then the camera's going to follow Buddy. And then somebody else gets the rebound, and then the camera's going to, instead of just following it around, it was actually all sort of staged in a way. So that each one had a purpose. So the ball's stolen, you see that, all that. So the ball's stolen, follow the ball, whoever stole the ball, he scores a basket, etc. So it was actually we rehearsed it, and we filmed it with a video camera and figured out where we wanted to be, more or less. And this was the scene. So-and-so got the ball, he passed it to so-and-so. And then he was able to get around the man who's covering him and make the shot. So, and figure out how we're going to do that. So then, with that sort of knowledge, we then did everything several times. So there was 3 cameras and a Steadicam. And there would be 2 cameras on dollies, one going this way, lengthwise, and one going crosswise. And then there'd be another camera with a much longer lens, and then there'd be a Steadicam in which the other cameras, nobody shot at that point, because you'd see. And we would just run every play that way. And my friend, I did the A camera, and my friend Oliver Wood, who later on went on to do the Bourne Identity movies and all that, did the B camera. And We got a wonderful kid from the local TV station who did the tight lens stuff, who was brilliant. So and Randy Nolan's a wonderful Steadicam operator. So all these really complicated Steadicam shots where the camera's, moving around and everything, revealing, and so they were all sort of staged. I mean, they had to be. You couldn't.
Well, yeah, I feel like each match has its own, beginning, middle, and end. Each match, there's like a drama that I've not, as you said, seen in other sports movies before.
This I'd like to think. My favorite sports movie, which I think was shot before this, the name of which I'm going to blank on, was a hockey movie with Paul Newman. Yes, Slapshot was a terrific movie, and that movie. That was the first movie where I felt that you were sort of inside, but it was nowhere near as complicated as this. Of course, ice is a lot more difficult, but so.
Okay, we can take some audience questions. Yep, right here.
Hi, thank you for such a good film. My question is during the matches when they're playing the games, you have such complex scenes, as you were just saying, and the camera of like the photographers of the journalists flash at such perfect times. I was wondering how that affected your shots and if you had to also replay many times to get those photography flashes perfect.
No, they were real old-fashioned flash bulbs, which have a long duration, so you can't miss them. You mean sometimes with a modern flash, digital or whatever they are, flash, electronic flash bulbs, you don't. It's very hard you might miss them, but the old-fashioned bulbs are actually bulbs. They last a long time. They go bang, and it lasts a while, so you're going to see it. And it's somewhat catch as can, that sort of thing.
Yep, in the way in the back.
Hi, you created one of the most beautiful postcards of the state of Indiana I've ever seen. It actually worked to convince me to go to Indiana University. It was amazing. You gave everybody like basketball fever through this movie. And I was wondering, have you ever been back to any of Indiana or visited any of the sites before?
Yes. I went back. Angela, who wrote the movie, I went back a couple of times. And I went back and actually shot commercials for Indiana University. So Angelo and I did that. So I went back for that actually. And we were going to do another movie, but Angelo wrote, but never happened. So I went back and scouted that, but didn't happen.
How much time did you spend in each space before you began shooting in there? Like how thoroughly did you understand each location?
No, we didn't have that much time. No, we mocked to rehearse these ideas. We mocked them up, but like Gene Hackman explains, basketball courts are all the same. So, no, I mean, I went there. Most of the thing was the lighting. I mean, you had to light this in such a way that you could shoot every direction all the time. I mean, you could see that. So that was there's many gymnasiums you can. This film, when it was first time I saw it, it was almost 4 hours long. Because there were all those basketball games, which you saw then later on montaged into shortened, just very montaged actually. But they were all full games. They were not shall we say, pickups to get that, when they're starting to win and everything's. They were full games. We shot a lot. I don't know how we did it. We had a very short time. But I remember falling asleep in dailies all the time. Oh, no, they go on for hours. I mean, like, if you imagine you had 3 cameras, we're shooting as much as we send this high speed and, lots of, so, but, yeah, so a lot of that, the editor was a brilliant editor also, a guy named Tim O'Mara. He came up with that idea of really montaging absolutely everything.
Yep, by the aisle.
I'm curious if you liked basketball before this film and how that did or did not influence how you decided to shoot the movie.
Well, actually, I was not a big basketball. I mean, I played basketball a little bit in high school, but not that was it in the beginning of high school. So I was not a basketball person, actually, oddly enough. I'm more of a baseball person. But Angelo and David got me into it. So, and that.
Did you watch any, I guess, footage of games in the 50s that were?
We watched that game, the final game, this is sort of almost a copy. What you see in the end is something of a copy of the final game. That really happened. The Jimmy Chitwood character simply held the ball and he was able to hold on to it long enough so nobody took it from him and waited till the last second and made that shot and won the game. And that's how, this is somewhat based on a true story, so. But that actually happened. No, that's the only thing we watched. I think what's happened a lot in the past, like this is 1985, most of the references we had, we weren't movie references, actually. It was usually, I looked at tons of old Life magazines that actually where I got some of the color ideas from it that have, the color photography in the early 1950s that had that kind of warmth and sort of complex parts of warmth. We didn't, movies were not, we didn't refer to movies, actually, oddly enough. We mostly referred either just to what we saw. The landscape, the light. It was more that, when we'd scout, we'd look for, more than, that wasn't common that you referred to in so much reference to past movies. Definitely seen a million movies by that time in my life, but they weren't references in that way.
Right here.
I'm just curious to hear your thoughts. They did a TV show about the Showtime Lakers, and there's this video that went kind of viral. The Lakers with like Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, of the camera operator like rollerblading down the court to catch these lobs from Magic Johnson to Kareem, and obviously it's just like the diametric opposite of like what you guys were dealing with here. And you kind of talked about how you've gone digital these last 15 years, and I'm just curious, like, if you were to shoot a basketball movie again now with, rollerblading camera operators and such at your disposal, like how would you create that warm, kind of intimate, textured feeling that you're talking about when there's all these kind of gizmos and doodads and such? It's just, I was thinking of that while I was watching the movie. So yeah.
Well, if I was doing, a lot of it also is art direction. You want to shoot in a warm place. You with warm colors. You want to shoot with warm light, and you can make digital. You can make it look, rich and warm, and that's basically what I do. It'd be interesting, though. You have much easier, much better ways to move cameras. You get very small rigs that will keep the camera from shaking and moving, and you can move and you can run a lot faster than a person can run carrying clumsy or a steady cam. So actually, all that would be interesting. And you could plant small cameras. You could do a lot. You could do a lot of things, actually. I don't think I haven't seen a good sports movie lately. I like something like F1, if you consider it. It's a kind of different sport, car racing, but that was done a huge amount of elaborate, small, cleverly placed cameras. So that could be done. That could be very interesting.
Yep, right here.
Hi, thank you for being here. I don't know how many times you've seen the movie over the years, but is there anything after watching it tonight that struck you about like the performances or just the narrative arc of the movie, or anything about Barbara Hershey or Dennis Hopper or Gene Hackman's?
Yes, actually, I saw a couple of things that I'd either forgotten or never saw. Barbara Hershey's reluctance to get involved. I mean, she plays it on the outside, but it's really also on the inside. You can really see it. I mean, really feel it almost. That was interesting. And Dennis Hopper, when you first meet him, and he comes to Gene's house at night and gives him that whole talk, that I'd forgotten that scene completely. That was just marvelous. And there was another very surprisingly, the movie is very emotional, obviously, but tonight it seemed to me richer, more emotional. But sometimes that's just a function of getting older. So.
I was also thinking about the fact that Dennis Hopper must have just shot Blue Velvet, which is a very, very different kind of performance for him the same year.
Actually, yeah. I think when he came to us, he'd just gotten out of a very long, nasty rehab.
Yeah.
And
right, these two performances sort of were
did he do it? He must have done it after us, or did he do it before?
I don't know if he did it before. I know that Blue Velvet came out, I think, before Hoosiers, but I don't know if he had actually filmed it before.
Yeah. Because I know he drank endless, smoked an awful lot of cigarettes, and drank endless cans of Diet Coke. He was very good in this, though. Wow. He was great in Blue Velvet also, one of the most actually amazing performance.
It's nice to see him as a kind of good, flawed, but a good character.
Yes. Yes, you're right.
Hello, I have a comment and a question. The comment is that I grew up in Indiana, and you really had me at the first shot when Gene Hackman was driving in. I love seeing those fields. That was wonderful. And my question is, during the times that you've seen this, and especially tonight, is there something that you would have done differently?
Yes, perhaps a little less smoke in the gymnasium, if anything. But one thing, to go back to the earlier question, what I saw tonight that I hadn't really realized for a second, how complex a lot of the scenes were, actually. They were much more complex than I remembered them. It's very, especially when the games, the interaction between Gene and the kids and the boys and coming back and forth, and the camera moving around and finding something else and moving. It was just much more complex than I remembered. And what's great about this, the way we shot it actually, is that you see a lot of people all the time in one shot. In the shots, there's not that many close-ups really, and there's a lot of shots where there's many people moving in the shot itself. but they're close enough, and seeing it on a screen as opposed to TV, they're close enough that you can read them. I mean, that you can read their emotions, you can read what they're doing. So it's that actually was the most interesting thing tonight that I sort of saw again.
The question was if it was based on a true story.
Yes, it was a true story, actually. It happened only maybe, it happened actually in 1951, so. But that's a question you're going to have to ask Angelo and David. But
Time for a couple more questions. We'll get you in the back.
"40 years ago, how unusual or irregular was it for a film to be shot almost entirely on location? Wasn't it more usual for the interiors to be done in Hollywood? I was curious about that.
yeah, but at that point in time, that was happening. I mean, 10 years earlier, it would have been more unusual, and 20 years earlier, it would have been extremely unusual. But for an American film to be, but that was actually, at that moment in time, that was really happening, that the shooting on location.
Okay, we'll take your last question. Question was, what film stocks did you
Oh,
use?
boy. Probably 5247 outdoors and at the hunt for 100 ASA. But the high-speed stock would be the second generation film stock, which I'm going to blank on the number. So it was Kodak, obviously, but 52 something. I'm not remembering it, but I know it's the second generation.
We'll get back to you on it. But we're out of time. But Fred, I just want to thank you for being here, for your work on this film.
Thank you.